was first learning to play on the monkey bars, it wasn't easy for him, he struggled. I wanted to let him figure it out on his own, but he was calling out for help. And other parents are looking at me like, why are you ignoring your child? I didn't know what to do. Now, the reality was he was about 6 inches off the ground. If he fell, it wasn't that big of a deal. He was struggling, and he was getting better each time, and soon he could fly across the monkey bars like it was no big deal. What I hadn't realized at that point was that there are different types of struggle. There's productive struggle and unproductive struggle. Productive struggle produces gains, and these gains help improve future performance. Unproductive struggle doesn't do that. It's sort of like struggle for the sake of struggle. One metaphor for thinking about this is with a bench presser and a spotter. A spotter's job is to give the bench presser the least amount of help so that the bench presser can lift the weight. In that way, the bench presser gets stronger every time. But if the weight is so heavy that the bench presser can't even lift it, then they're not getting stronger, and that's unproductive struggle. So, in that way, productive struggle is better than unproductive struggle. Productive struggle has a cycle of struggle and feedback, and it leads to rewards. Unproductive struggle doesn't have it. It's sort of like flailing in the wind. You don't actually get better. So the question then is, what does this mean for education? Because if we're letting students productively struggle, but it appears like unproductive struggle to others, they might criticize their choices because they don't understand. In particular, there are 3 groups I'm concerned about. Students, others, including other teachers, administrators, and parents, and even yourself. If we can practically deal with the messaging, it's going to make our lives a lot easier. My colleague Nanette, who's awesome right there, she tells this story about how she realized this was an issue with her students. It was about 3 weeks into the school year, and students had come up to her and asked her, "When are you going to start teaching us?" And she said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, all you do is give us problems and you ask us questions. When are you going to tell us what to do and have us take notes?" See, the reality is that students aren't necessarily used to this. This is going to be something that we're going to need to repeat repeatedly over time. We need to teach them how to learn. It's like the saying goes, we're not just giving them a fish, we're teaching them to fish. But they're not the only group that may have these concerns. Other teachers, administrators, and parents don't have the benefit of seeing what we're doing firsthand. They hear about it secondhand. It sounds like this. "My teacher doesn't care about me at all. She just lets me suffer. And when I ask her for help, she won't even tell me what to do." The reality is, talk to the other teachers and administrators, let them know your goals. Talk to the parents at back to school night, at open house, or even in a letter on Monday. When they're clear about your goals, they're going to be on your side because they'll know that you have students' best interest in mind. But you may even doubt yourself. Think about a lesson you worked really hard on and you really wanted to go well, it just wasn't going the way you hoped. And somewhere in the middle of the lesson you start wondering, why am I doing it this way? Why did I just play it safe and tell them what to do? The reality is, you know your goals. You want students to productively struggle because this is something that will help them in the long run. But even though this is a worthwhile goal, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to attain. So, I want to conclude then by talking about how learning how to ride a bike is like math education. When you learn how to ride a bike, there's a cycle of, again, struggle and feedback, and then you learn how to ride a bike. It's a rewarding thing. So with that in mind, how do we actually teach children how to ride a bike? Well, one way we could do it is we could ride the bike for them. and this might be useful at first, but how long before, because they don't want to see it, but how long before it's silly for a child to watch a grown-up ride the bike for them? And how long before it's silly for students to watch their teacher do the math for them at the front of the class? Another way is with training wheels. Training wheels provide a structure that enable a child to ride the bike, but oftentimes they're crushed like with a false sense of skill. I know I've done this when I gave students procedures that they could use like a mindless math robot, but didn't really understand what they were doing. Have you ever seen one of these? This is a balance bike. Notice it has no pedals. The only way you can use it is by cruising along, and in that way you have this constant cycle of struggle and feedback. You learn very quickly. Do we always have opportunities like this in our math classroom? Because if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to fall. The structure you came to expect is no longer there, and you don't know what to do. Similarly, I've had situations where, we've all had this, where a student can do the problem procedurally, and then if the problem changes ever so slightly, it was like they've never seen this problem before. It's a very big understanding. So here's my call to action. Give your students opportunities to productively struggle. Realize that this is not something that will be familiar to them. You're going to have to remind them over and over again. But one very strong word of advice, don't try this at home. I've been trying to give my wife opportunities to productively struggle. Not going so well. Thank you.